Yo, what is going on, my fellow weebs? Krono here, and welcome back to the channel. So today I actually wanted to get a few friends together to have a conversation, and I feel like it doesn't really get talked about enough in the PSO2 space. So I'm joined by my good friends Nep and Kai. Yes, they're both bouncers. Don't at me. It just happened to be this way. We congregate together. There aren't very many of us, but it kind of just works out this way. But I wanted to talk with you guys about balancing. And since both of them tend to do content that vastly differs from what I do on a daily basis, I thought it'd be a fun conversation to have to get the perspective from someone who plays the game differently than I do. And so I guess we'll go in, I don't know what order we're gonna go in. Nep, if you want to introduce yourself, feel free.
Me? Oh, it's gotta be me first.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're first.
Oh, I was hoping it was Kai, dude. Nah, man, don't put me on the spot already.
That's a nice intro you got there.
all right, fine. So we're gonna pivot and make Kai. This is all going in the video
Yeah,
too.
you.
This is a great part. Now it's Kai's turn.
Hey, hi,
Go,
I'm
Kai, go.
Star. You probably already know me. I play this game a lot. I use Soaring Blades and I stream on Twitch. I do have a YouTube, but it's mostly just random gameplay footage.
And their stuff will be linked in the video description, so don't worry too much about that. Kai is on the right. Nep is on the left. The one who decided he wanted to skip his intro now has to give an intro since he's going second.
Hey, man, now I can improv. Now it's good. I mean, all I gotta really say is I'm the author of the Bouncer Guide. I play Boots a lot. I complain about Boots a lot as well. And I guess if you heard about me, it was because of my gameplay videos and, you know, just putting out like all types of different Boots content.
Hey, it works. Something I personally don't do because boots. That's a conversation topic for another video. We'll have another one of those. But
Oh boy.
as far as balancing goes, and we have different, perspectives, right? Like I stream, Kai streams as well, and Nep, you do content on the side, like, the whole bouncer guide thing, and then upload stuff on YouTube. I'm sure you guys have all probably seen different things. And a big thing I've always explained to people is that usually in your own communities, it tends to be a bit of an echo chamber. So you don't always hear everything that's going on. With the recent buffs that some of the classes got to, and I want to preface this because some people may not know this, the buffs that were received on global in JP, they were mistranslated on global. The 15% damage buff is only given to those classes when they don't have threat, not when they do have threat. Very awkward. Pretty big mix up to make there. But it does allow them to, in theory, play better in party play. So I'm going to ask this question to both Kai and then Nep, or vice versa. We'll ask Nep first, and then we'll ask the Kai afterwards, since Nep had to do his intro second. How you feel the balance should work. So Nep, overall, how do you feel, or where do you feel like Sega's balance should play when it comes to solo versus party play overall? And this is in respect less of like how we feel personally for ourselves, like what we want to happen for the game, or what we think is going to be good for the game overall.
So after having played this game for as long as I have, kind of start noticing patterns as to how Sega balances things around their content. And I really do feel like the best approach when it comes to class balancing or everything like that in general would be making it into party play.
Okay.
It's very clear to me as well because a lot of the content revolves around party play, even if it can be done by yourself. But I think there's a very distinct difference in the kind of design that they have.
And this is coming from someone who does a lot of solo content and does a lot of like challenge content and things like that. Not to say that you don't ever play in a party. Obviously, you guys do, like, the group stuff that you guys have done on your channel. But like someone who does push a lot of solo content as much as possible, pushing boots to the absolute limit. So you're in the mindset, of course, that game should probably be mostly balanced around party play for the most part. Then, if you had to like kind of give a split, what would you say?
I would say like a 90-10.
A 90-10? Okay.
Yeah.
And Kai,
And
what do you think?
maybe I would skew it a little bit more because it's like I mentioned before, or just now actually. It's about the fact that if we look at the content that's been being delivered lately with Solus, we'll just as a core example. Clearly, that quest was not meant to be cleared solo. Even though Kai and I have done it, it's very apparent that with the way that the fight works, you're intended to group up with people and figure out how to take down the boss with the composition that you have.
Right, and you guys both cleared it. I'm assuming you guys cleared it at level 75. Is that right? Or
Yeah,
did we?
75. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So just this is more so like I know a lot about these guys, but you guys may not have learned about them on this channel. So it's more so to introduce you guys to them or the audience in general, so that you guys kind of have an idea of why I look to them when I think about these sort of things. Kai, what do you think?
I agree for the most part, because at its core, PSO2 has never been a solo game. The only exception to that would be like dual quests. So as long as class can clear that solo with a respectable time of reaching S rank, I don't think it matters outside of that for solo play technically. Like, I know it sucks if your class can't do stuff like solo DFS, but like you're not meant to be doing that. So at the same time, it's like it sucks, but that's how the game is. It's meant to be clear with 4 people and then decently gear, and then you go in there and do it.
Gotcha.
And then dual quests, you just have the defies that makes any class viable to solo play. So that's another thing.
Yeah, so like and it is worth mentioning that the entire, and from my knowledge, I don't think there's anything that isn't, do we know of anything that isn't properly scaled in PSO right now? Isn't everything scaled to the number of players that are in?
I was going to bring that up,
Sure.
but yeah, I'm pretty sure everything's scaled for what I remember off the top of my head. Anything that's relevant at the very least.
Right. So it is worth mentioning that the game does scale to number of players that are in quests. So if you have, for those of you guys who don't know, if you have less players, let's say, for example, you're running with a 2-man team as opposed to a 4-man team in something like Solus, his health is scaled appropriately to the number of players you have in the actual quest. What are your thoughts on, like, I guess we'll start with Kai this time. What are your thoughts on including that, but being based more around a party? I guess to be more obvious, like I'm also kind of in the mindset of it should mostly be party play. That's how the game realistically should be scaled. It's very obvious. That's how the entire game works. But there is this element of scaling that happens in quests. So like, how do you feel like that factors in with that sort of design choice? And we'll start with Kai.
I'm not even sure, because I don't want to throw around numbers, because I think those are the number that I've heard, but I'm not even sure if it's true. And then if it is true, then it involves stuff that probably shouldn't be talked about.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean.
Yeah, but the scaling always favor having more people, because the scaling is not 1-for-1 additive to the HP pool of the boss. So like, if the FS had 1 million HP, if you have 2 people, it's not 2 million, it's like 1 point something along those lines, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I feel like it's okay at the way it is at the moment. I don't really have any bad thing to say about it, I guess. I'm kind of a loss of a word about this, actually.
That's fair.
Things to say about it, actually.
That's fair.
I'm bad about this.
Yeah, Nep, what do you think?
So, I think the whole scaling thing, I mean, this is completely new if we were to compare this from base game, because that was not common at all.
No.
Scaling did not exist for the most part in base game.
If you wanted a solo, you were soloing 12-man content if you were doing like UQs and things like that. And we did. That is why I hated Bouncer Luster, because I did not want to tech cancel for 25 minutes straight.
It's funny,
not fun. It's not fun. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, with the introduction of the whole scaling system, it does help with solo stuff, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it was designed specifically to help solo. It was to fill in the gaps of situations where you don't have enough people. So in a way, it kind of accommodates for all sorts of different scenarios, and it just happens it will also benefit solo play.
I want to piggyback on this just to say that I don't even think that it's retro. It's actually additive, as in like the boss HP is figured out from the start for 1 player, and then it gets adjusted depending on the number of player you have.
Yeah, that's
so
correct.
It's never a minus, it's always a plus.
Yeah, that's correct.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's more like for solos, kind of like just throwing them a bone a little bit, in the sense of like, this wasn't really designed specifically for solo in mind. It was more so designed in like the mindset of like accommodation overall for like all types of play, right? Like if you only have a group of 3 friends and you want to go with your 3 friends, then it shouldn't be, super punishing to those 3 people, I guess. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
And
it's a lot easier to have like a fixed HP pool and then just add to that HP pool depending on how many players you have in your party.
gotcha. Well, I mean, yeah, like I said, this is kind of what I wanted to bring about as far as a conversation when it comes to just scaling and in solo versus group play, because like a lot of times I've seen this, and I'm not sure if you guys seen it in your community as well, is players have this mindset. Like a very common one I see all the time is the Tector conversation, and I'm sure you guys have heard it beforehand, is like personally believing that like Tector doesn't do enough damage, like it should do more damage. And at least in my experience, I've played with Tectors who do comparable amounts of damage if you factor in the amount of damage they provide the rest of their group. Should there be like something more for them? Like I guess the better question in the situation itself is like, when it comes to balancing, is it really that bad for Rangers and Tectors at the moment, being that they also offer other things outside of their own personal damage? I guess we'll go with Nep first this time.
So, just to clarify on something, Ranger does fine in both solo and multi, especially now for the latter. They've, for what I recall, at least historically, Ranger has had a good track record when it comes to solo stuff.
I will clarify, the very beginning of NGS, Ranger solo was a bit of a dumpster fire where where I believe it was ground kicks were its strongest single target damage. It was really bad for like a few weeks, but to be fair, balance was a bit of a dumpster fire all around when NGS on first launch, where Julian Dance, those of you guys who remember the Pega Dash,
single hit
was the strongest damage for a long time. So that's fair. Just to clarify, but yes, so Ranger's doing all right.
But for Tekker, I mean, I'm not qualified to really talk about this necessarily. That would be up to someone like Cordelia, since they are like the peak Tekker that we have on ship 2. I mean, our Augur at least. But in the context, in the context of party play, I think you already answered your own question when it came to how much damage does Tekker actually do? Because by them existing, they are already giving you shifter. They're already giving you more damage overall, more down factor as well, etc., etc. So it's not just about the damage. It's not just about the individual damage, but also the tools that they bring that actually help with speed clears. Right.
I mean, yeah, and even just in regular standard play too, keep in mind Tectors are also providing D-ban, which is keeping people off the floor sometimes. So it does also keep them dealing damage, even if their damage isn't amazing. It's still more than 0, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, they also have more emphasis.
Also, yes, super helpful there too. And feel free to chime in at any point too. But any thoughts you might have as well, or you mostly kind of in line with Nep on that one, Kai?
Yeah, a lot of people tend to forget that, as we like to call it in the 14 community, raid DPS is a thing, which basically is damage that's given to other people that contributes to the total amount of damage everybody does, which is added to the person that's actually supporting. And if you consider that you're doing up to 5 to 10% more damage just because of a Tekker shifter, that's already like an insane amount of damage added to the Tekker if the Tekker is performing well. But when we were talking about Ranger Tekker, and then Ranger was good for solo, I agree with that. But I think Tekker just also, but it's an entirely different topic, but I think any class that uses techs in general will suffer at the moment because techs are in a really weird spot damage-wise.
You can just say it's bad.
I don't want to say that.
It's fair to assume that they're bad, but let's agree they're not good right now.
When the only class that's tech that doesn't use tech is the one that does well, it tells you already a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about Waker.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like Waker's a bit of an outlier, though. Isn't Waker kind of just strong in general?
Waker when you think about strong, classes? They use tech, technically, but they don't use techniques. That's why they're the offliner.
Yeah, that's for scaling.
Yeah, just for scaling in general. Just to clarify, guys, it's more about like Waker uses tech for its damage type, not actual techs. But techs are kind of in a weird spot overall as far as scaling goes. And then I guess the other point to bring up in this is like, how do you guys feel about the buff that they provided all of the range classes? Like, do we think it's enough? Is it the right type of buff they should have given? Like, how could they have done that? Because I feel like it was a very blanket, all right, we'll give everyone 15% damage when they don't have threat because these classes are never going to have threat. Is what it felt like they kind of gave them. So thoughts? Go with Kai to start with, I guess.
Yeah. I've already got it all figured out. What I'm about to say. There's a big star to that 15 damage, by the way, 50% damage. It only applies to PAs and techniques, nothing else. And if you consider force, they also have this this technique skill called tag domination, which also only applies to technique, which also means that their CT gets absolutely nothing from that. That's what I'm reading into this. So
I see.
The only thing that force gets are basically stronger techs, which makes sense. That's their entire kit. But it's not enough. I don't think it's enough. But in party play, it's completely fine because you don't have aggro, blah blah blah. So you basically have 15% overall damage on your normal tag behavior and all that stuff. That's great. But because this skill boosts your damage by 15% on your techniques, it doesn't mean that you want to go ranger sub. I've already seen this opinion going around places that because you don't want aggro, you should go ranger sub. I completely disagree, because in a good party environment, even with that 15%, you will not have aggro. I'm telling you right now. So ranger sub, no.
Gotcha. And CT, by the way, meaning
compound techs, aka united techniques.
Got it. Cool. So yeah, I guess it doesn't apply to everything across the board. So is that just for force that's got that going on, or is that like
it's actually all classes? So now gunner, because their PAs are stronger, their finishers are entirely different depending on if they have aggro or not.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
So it's not even blanket across the board. It was just specific to PAs and techniques. That is very interesting. I didn't even consider that when I was looking at it. Honestly, just my brain saw 15% more and I was like, oh, cool. And I'm sure a lot of people thought the same thing. So yeah, that's kind of crazy. All right, Nep, do you have anything to add to that?
No, not really. I mean, Kai pretty much covered all grounds here.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I just want to add one thing. I know Talus also gets the benefit from this, but there's one thing that I wasn't able to get an answer on in its techniques cast under the turret spells, aka like, you know how you can do spread shots?
Yeah, bullets basically.
Yeah, that's a PA, right? Spread shot gets buffed. But then after that, you're using techniques through those cards, but I don't even know if that's buffed.
I imagine that would be buffed. Like, that would make the most sense, but like...
It's not a technique, technically.
We don't know for certain, right?
I have no idea. No one's been able to answer this question.
Huh. I guess it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure someone's going to DM me with the answer after this video goes live, so I'll let you know if I find out. But
I pray.
Yeah, hopefully. That's mostly kind of what I wanted to cover. So do we think like that 15% is not enough then? Do we think it should be higher? Do we think it should be done differently? Like, how can I put this? Like, what would have been the better call there? Would it have been a blanket 15% buff?
I mean,
either one of you guys can join in. Either one, doesn't matter.
Go ahead.
I think, sorry, it's gonna be quick. I think the buff should have been for the DPS specifically, not for PAs and techniques specifically.
So just blanket 15% across the board potency wise.
When you don't have aggro, or well, I mean, aggro or not, I don't really care either way. If it's solo content, I think you should have the buff, and if it's party play, I think it should be when you don't have aggro.
Okay, I think that's fair. And thoughts, Nep?
It's like you said, it's just a blanket fix to a problem that they noticed when it comes to pugs specifically, because you know, as history has shown, pugs do tend to struggle compared to regular groups, more organized groups. So in order to circumvent that issue, then I suppose this is like their immediate response to that thing. So
yeah, and I mean, I think it's also a big point to keep in mind is that most people play in pugs. It's not super common that you're always playing with a group or a specific dedicated group, and people do. And it's not fair to like to specifically say like, oh well, you know, just play with a group of people all the time. Not everyone does that. And yes, it's a multiplayer game. Yeah, like yes, it's a multiplayer game. Yes, you play with people, but you don't always want to be hamstrung into having to get the same people all the time to do everything. So It's not really going to be the case all the time. But like, yeah, like a big thing is I know Kai mentioned, you know, taking up a Ranger as the sub is like, you know, the better choice to like, you know, to not have threat. Realistically speaking, in a proper group, no, that's not really going to be the choice.
Absolutely.
Though
not.
where I can see that's going to be helpful though is in pugs, when your damage is just high enough to push over the pugs. Having Ranger sub can push you below to give you that extra damage. However, I will say that I have personally taken Ranger sub in what is it, in Lucille Exploration during normal attack day, and I have taken threat. So it's not always something that's gonna win out every single time. So keep that in mind, that you can still end up in situations where you still end up with threat, and it's not exactly fun, because I have, you know, stolen threat for normal attacking and then just been bopped right in the head.
Yeah, you can also just be attributed, you're the ranged character that has aggro for this attack, and then it'll revert back. There's nothing you can do about it, even if you're not a ranged class. By ranged, I mean like out of range of melee.
Right, that does happen as well, so that's something to keep in mind as far as it goes. So I guess we're kind of like all kind of in line as far as balancing goes in the game itself. Realistically speaking, it should be mostly pushed towards party play for the most part. I think there is something to be said about solo play. It's kind of important. I've always said it's mostly important for any game to exist to not cater towards the solo player, but not to forget them either. Where there should be some form of content that's, you know, challenging or that, you know, does kind of cater towards them a bit more. But like with a lot of the conversations about, you know, certain classes being buffed, other classes not getting enough buffs. I know a big one, it was kind of funny. We talked about raid DPS from like Final Fantasy 14. For those of you guys who played back in base PSO2 on JP, I got to see, you know, unfortunately using third-party programs that you shouldn't use because they're against TOS. But we got to see things like, you know, different types of DPS, and a very common thing was Xanverse DPS, where your Tector on the DPS meter, when you included Xanverse, was your highest DPS because it was taking damage from everyone around them. For those who didn't know what Xanverse's skill was, it took 10% of your damage you dealt while you were in the actual field, I believe.
Was that before or after it was nerfed?
I think after, not before. Before it was substantially
it was
more.
15 to 20% is
I
win
think it was
damage.
20. I don't remember.
I think it was 20, and you could buff it with a specific weapon is what it was. But like they got nerfed down to like 5 or 10% or something like that. But like very commonly your Tector would be your highest on your meter if you had them include Xanverse, because it gave them all the damage, and that was like the raid DPS situation. But I guess all of this was mostly just to talk about the fact that, like, as far as balancing goes, the game's mostly generalized towards party play, and even those who solo content kind of feel the same way. The game to be good, it kind of has to be balanced that way. I don't foresee anyone realistically seeing any major buffs where a certain class, I don't foresee a world where Ranger and Tector should ever do as much damage as some of the other classes, though I do think that classes like Force probably need a little bit of help as far as things are concerned, and that's a bit of an understatement.
Absolutely.
Any any closing thoughts you guys wanted to get to? Anything that I might have missed as far as this conversation goes?
No, I was just gonna say, for Force specifically, Force is definitely the class that needs the most help in both solo and party play, because Jesus Christ, dude.
Yeah,
techniques by themselves are not
so
good.
multifaceted. I feel like as Force's, maybe this is just me, but does Force like suffer from overcomplication, or is that just me?
Grant sucks.
Like techs suck.
I think it's just techs do too much. Like they all do something different, and they balance their damage because they do something different, and it's just very weird. It's in a very awkward spot.
It's not just that. Like if DFS is looking a little bit to the left, your last tick of Grant's charge might just not hit. Like it's stupid like that.
The tracking sucks.
It went from being one of the best techs to track in base to like the worst piece of garbage in NGS.
I mean, what was it? Partisan mains would like to talk to you about Volgraptor for years now, but again, another conversation for another video. Yeah. But thank you guys for joining me today. It's definitely something I wanted to talk about, and I was just curious to see your thoughts on it. This was something that I literally gave them maybe about an hour heads up that we were going to talk about this topic. So if we missed anything, apologies, but feel free to include it in the comments below. We'll be more than happy to read through those. I'm sure there are going to be some very divisive opinions on how strong certain things are going to be, so it should be fun. or it might give me cancer. I'm not sure which is going to happen. Any of you guys want to shout out anything in particular before we sign off here? I'll give Nep the floor first.
Well, I stream on Twitch for what it's worth. I don't stream this game though. This game actually stresses me out when I stream it. So I'm not even kidding, dude.
The content this man does is stressful. I've seen it. Okay, I've been there for it.
You sounded stressed just saying that.
No, it's true. Okay, all right, listen.
Absolutely.
All right. If you look at my videos, I like to have on the bottom right corner, I like to have inputs.
Mhm.
Just judging from that alone, you can probably tell just how concentrated I need to be.
Oh my god, yes. And I will be including their links, by the way. Not only will you see them in the actual, like, I'm probably gonna try to find a way to include you guys in the title to have it linked to your YouTube channels. That's the thing it does now. But I'll include their links in the video description as well, so you can check either of them out. They're both fantastic individuals. And Kai, anything you wanted to add in as well? Anything you want to shout out?
No, not really. I stream on Twitch. This game specifically, even if it stresses me out. Looks at
Wow.
no, I'm just kidding.
I gotta make this a competition, dude. Come on.
It's sometimes it's a little bit of sweat, sometimes it's just daily grind. So you guys already know the vibe.
And you guys know where to find me as always. Again, thanks for hanging out today. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe when you keep up with more, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care, everyone. Peace out.